Hi everyone, welcome to our short primer on metastability and synchronizer. Metastability is very important part of digital designs today. Metastability events are very common in digital circuits. Originally, they were required when reading an asynchronous input signals. So basically, if you had an asynchronous signal on the design, you need to ensure that there is no metastability in the design. Now, with multiple clock domains, typically there are hundreds of clock domains in the design now, metastability can occur when data crosses these clock domain boundaries. So what is this metastability all about? How does it happen? How does a design enter into metastability? Let's understand a little bit more. So let's first, before we understand how a design gets into metastability, let's go back to a flip-flop model. So typically a flip-flop model is represented by a master latch and a slave latch. Okay, so basically there is a master latch part of the circuit and then there is slave latch part of the circuit, and this is typically represented like this. Now consider this flip-flop and assume, let's say clock is low. Okay, so let's say clock is low, it's basically clock is at 0 and it is going to high. So we are here, clock is low, and let's say this node A is at 1. Okay, now assume that D is changing from 0 to 1. So let's say this D is 0 and it is changing to 1. So since D is changing from 0 to 1, clock is low, so this transmission gate is open. So basically this is changing from 0 to 1. That means this is changing from 1 to 0. So node 1 is going from 1 and it's actually going towards 0, while B is settling towards 1, which will then feed the output. Now what happens is, if this transition which is happening happens very close to the clock edge, and as soon as the clock edge comes, this will close. Now why metastability happens? Typically it will take some time for this circuit to become stabilized. What is the meaning of stabilized? That D changed from 0 to 1, so B has to basically become 1, and it takes some time, right, because of the delays in logic here involved. Also the clock logic itself, it's not directly connected, there is some delay in the clock logic as well. So because of that, it takes some time when the value of B stabilizes. If the change happens, that value of B, this closes because clock becomes 1 before B has stabilized, then the metastability occurs. People have done simulations to understand this metastability. This shows one of the simulation examples where basically input is changing and clock is changing. So let's say this is the case when input is changing but it's a little bit far from the clock. Then as you start moving input change close to the clock edge, and as it starts becoming very close to the clock edge, the flops enters into the metastability. What is the meaning of metastability? Is that at this point of time, since this value was not stabilized, you cannot predict whether the output Q is going to be 0 or 1. D input changed from 0 to 1. If it was normal circuit behavior, output Q should have changed to 1. But since metastability occurred, this circuit was not stabilized, and because of that, Q value cannot be predicted. So this is what is known as metastability. We actually have a CDC workshop, which is a 5-day comprehensive workshop which talks about metastability, MTBF, how do you resolve metastability, what are the various circuits to be designed, what are the various RTL to be designed to solve it. Please do join this workshop if you want to understand more about it and how designers solve it. We do have other workshops which are coming up. We have Verilog workshop coming up, which is from 1st to 4th of November. UArt workshop, which is coming up on 5th to 6th November. Then there are a couple of free webinar, one on VLSI design flow on 5th of November, evaluation of RISC-V architecture on 11th November, and the CDC workshop, which I was talking about, is 7th to 11th November. We do have boot camps coming up, which involves live lectures. Workshop means recorded lectures and live Q&A, but we do have boot camps coming up where basically we have an RTL design boot camp, we have an STA boot camp, and Tickle boot camp coming up, which is around 3 to 4 weeks of boot camps, live lectures, labs on cloud. And if you're interested, do reach out to us from our page. There is a WhatsApp link you'll find, and we're going to increase the prices soon, so don't miss your spot to book at the discounted price.